Hey, I'm Gabe.
Hey, I'm Sarah.
And I'm Jamie.
Welcome, Sarah.
Hi, thank you.
Long-time colleague, first-time podcaster.
Very excited to be here.
For us, you and I have been on a podcast before. It just wasn't this one.
Yeah, in like a dirty basement at the party.
It was
I can't say this. This is a little nicer.
a dirty. That should be the name of their show. It would get more listeners. A dirty basement at the party. Got all sorts of grief for it too.
Yes.
Which I don't know if we want
Yeah, best left
So you and I each come from the world of Planned Parenthood, but neither of us are there now.
Yes.
You're with URGE. What's URGE?
What is URGE? It is short for Unite for Reproductive and Gender Equity. We're a dope youth-led reproductive justice organization that's focused in Midwestern and Southern states, and we do really incredible work here in Ohio. So I joined the team about 6 months ago, and I am the second policy person that they hired in the states that we're doing work in. So I have the unique pleasure of following Jamie around and some of the other policy staff and you, and going to the State House and monitoring all the things and trying to cause, a ruckus where we can.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it seems to be good work. And I feel like the thing that I get from the URGE team over the past few years largely is more than any other group in the movement, a big push on making sure that our communications, our materials, our discussions aren't specifically gendered.
Yeah.
Because,
They have been forever.
Time.
Yeah. So that's a big effort that URGE has been kind of leading in some repro spaces is culture shift, and how do we be more inclusive and gender affirming and gender expansive when we talk about abortion access and other issues that fall under the umbrella of reproductive justice. And so I know the picture from my colleague Jordan, who's awesome. Maybe you've been on this podcast before.
Yes, a couple times.
And Taylor, who's up in Bowling Green, Toledo area, holding signs that said abortion isn't just this issue. And that's become one of our main taglines and campaign efforts, both in the work that we do with our canvassing, but also online. And so, yeah, it's really kind of interesting seeing the faces of legislators really not understanding that still.
Right.
And there's just so much more work to be done to shift the narrative away from that women-centric language that we for
Right.
movement have been using for too long.
Right. And you guys have kind of been the thought leaders on that. Thought leader being a really annoying buzzword. But it's kind of spread and been an insightful set of guidance that I've seen. Even Lauren Blauvelt with Planned Parenthood, she was testifying in a Senate committee not too long ago and kind of paused in the middle of questions and answers with the senators and did a little bit of educational, you just asked me about women, but this isn't only women. There are trans men who seek abortion care. There are people who are all across the gender spectrum. That sort of conversation wasn't happening a few years ago. And I think the URGE team being very vocal about, hey, we need to change, we need to do better. That's shifted the discussion.
Yeah. And it's an exciting discussion that I think there's so much more work to be done about it, but that work has been led by our members and our canvassers. Our members are queer and trans people of color, Black and brown folks that are continuously even pushing us on our messaging, which in many ways is ahead of what, some repro groups have used in the past in Ohio, but hasn't been the case for other Southern states, especially the work we've been doing and in DC. But we're constantly having that ongoing discussion of how can we be more reflective and inclusive of our folks in the language and messaging that we use. So I really tilt my hat off to them because they're holding me accountable at every step of the way and ensuring that when we go have those meetings with legislators and we're sharing our testimony that it's reflective of that.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, we were just having a discussion yesterday in our staff meeting about distributing a candidates guide that came from several national organizations that we've worked with. This document's only 2 years old.
Mhm.
And it already reads as being pretty out of date because it's just women's this, women's that. And there's no discussion in it at all of anybody but women.
Yeah.
So
We got to do better.
Mhm.
and you are taking kind of the lead in the advocacy day this year. So you want to talk about advocacy day?
Yes, I have the unique pleasure of wrangling all of our partners and all of our people to host Advocacy Day.
Sucker.
Yes, I'm very excited.
Regretting that
yet?
Talk to you when it's over.
Yeah.
It's a big
It
responsibility.
is a huge responsibility.
It's a huge responsibility. It's gone pretty well so far.
You're doing awesome.
Thank you. So this year's event's going to be on April 1st. Not a joke. It's
Mhm.
April Fool's Day, but we're going to go to the Capitol. We're going to go talk about, the bills that we've been monitoring, the bills that we want, the bills that we need, and the issues that our folks care about. So it's Wednesday, April 1st. We'll be at the Athenaeum. I get it wrong every time, from 9 to 4. And all of our partners and our folks are welcome. So the general message is going to be like, we're not fooling around. Stop playing us as fools. Like the slew of bills that have come out of the state legislature,
Right.
we know have been based on misinformation and stigma and lies and shame and all the things. And we're not tricked or fooled by it. And in fact, like there's some legislation that would do the opposite of that and require medical providers to provide evidence-based, accurate, comprehensive medical information, which is like 2020 is hard to believe that that's like not a thing that
Already
exists.
happened, yeah.
So
Right.
how can we point to that bill and be like, this is the bill and legislation that should be getting hearings, and other bills that like point to the racial disparities that we've seen in the state as a result in many ways of the abortion bans and restrictions that have come out. So yeah, I'm pretty excited and pretty jazzed. We're moving along in the process of getting things out, but I'd love to have over 100 people join us and share their stories and talk about why Lobby Day still matters,
Mhm.
even though like it's felt like we haven't gotten anything in a very long time. And why is that? So we're pretty excited.
Right. So again, that's April 1st in Columbus. The registration link for podcast listeners is in the show notes. For radio listeners, if you go to the NARAL Pro-Choice Ohio Facebook page, look at the events tab. It's on ours. It's on the Urge Facebook page, events tab. So if you're listening to this, you can probably figure out where to find it. There is a small fee associated just to cover the expense of renting the facility and the meals. It's
$10.
$10. And if you're a student, if you're a low-income individual, shoot us a note. We'll make sure that if you need some assistance, you can get some assistance. One thing I thought of is that there was a question in one of our planning sessions on parking. There's a giant parking garage. We need to make sure people know right beside the Athenaeum.
Yes.
So
Yes.
parking is not free, but easy.
Mhm.
It's right there. So
And the facility is ADA accessible, and food, both breakfast and lunch, will be provided. We'll release a lineup of speakers and have a press conference. So details are coming together, and we'll release those as we have them. But we'd love to have you. If there's any sort of carpooling or travel needs for other like folks in the state, please let us know. We're happy to help figure that out to get you there.
and speaking of bills, what's going on in what's in committee?
Annoying shit. Oops, shoot. There, I did it.
Good job.
Bleep. Gabe had to bleep that out. So yeah, this week we had the second hearing on Senate Bill 260, the telemedicine for medication abortion ban. It was hilarious because it really did prove that they don't give a crap about actual safety of people at all. I mean, a higher right to life was basically like at the beginning of their testimony, well, we don't even want this medication to be on the market, but if it is on the market, we should, restrict it as much as possible. Created Equal came and testified with some very ridiculous stuff. There was actually a doctor who testified, but she didn't actually provide it, so she doesn't really have any information about how any of that works.
They've done this a couple times where a doctor comes and testifies, and you think, oh, well, they've got a medical professional. But then when you actually listen to their testimony or read through it, they don't do
Mm-mm.
any of the things that they're discussing at all. They don't have actual expertise in the area.
Yeah.
I thought it was kind of interesting when I looked at her and she was wearing a white coat and I was looking at her testimony. I was like, I don't know where you work. I don't know what field you're in. Did
Mhm.
they give you this coat in the hallway and ask you to testify? Like
Right.
Yeah, I think the only thing she identified herself was a family medicine doctor. That was like the only identifier she
Yeah.
had at all. So yeah, I don't know where she practices to avoid her as your provider because
Right.
obviously she's not providing comprehensive healthcare for people. Yeah, I mean, overall, it was, I think one of the most interesting pieces of it all was this idea that if you use telemedicine, the person's going to be so far away from the provider. Like, they don't think that people drive multiple hours to a clinic now. I mean,
Right.
it's not like the clinic in Columbus only serves people within 20 miles of the clinic. People drive multiple hours. People come up from Kentucky because Kentucky only has one clinic. West Virginia only has one clinic. Indiana is pretty restricted as well. Like, people come from out of state into Ohio to our clinics all the time. So like this whole idea that if you use telemedicine, they're going to be further away. Actually, they're going to be closer because it's not like you can do a web chat, from your couch to get this medication.
Right.
Like, they still have to go to a medical facility. They're just, the doctor is in a different building of a medical facility further away. So like there's still
Right.
nurses and medical staff and probably nurse practitioners and those kinds of things in the clinic that person is in. The doctor is just someplace else.
Right.
So like if you do telemedicine, this person is actually probably closer now to a medical facility than they would be if they were just driving all the way to Columbus and then driving all the way home again.
Right.
So yeah, all of the facts and logic just get shot straight out the window. I mean, they used FDA statistics of like reports of adverse events, and they only reported the like how many reports had been reported. They didn't actually say out of how many. So like when you just
Right.
give a number of 4,200 adverse events without the out of 3.7 million doses of the drug over 20 years,
Yeah.
those sentences are very different. So
Medication abortion is exceptionally safe.
yes, I mean, if
Right.
you do that math, it's 1/10 of 1% of an adverse event happening.
Right. Which could just be some extra bleeding.
Yes.
And the sources that they had like were from 2000,
Mm-hmm.
like 2003
Mm-hmm.
and 2005. It's
Yeah.
like, why?
Mhm.
It's 2000.
And that was actually a completely different protocol
Yeah.
back then too.
Yeah.
I mean, the FDA approved medication abortion as 3 pills of mifepristone and 1 misoprostol later on. Like, so now the protocol is 1 and 1.
Right.
And a lot of that excess bleeding and those kinds of things was caused by triple the dose of mifepristone at the beginning. So like the new protocol that was approved, I think in 2016, actually makes the medication even safer and more effective. Because I mean, that was the protocol that was being used everywhere but Ohio, because Ohio has the stupid law and following the FDA protocol perfectly. So yeah.
Yeah. So interesting fact, we've expanded some of our staff into California. So if folks aren't familiar with Just Care, it was a student-led group in California that helped lead the way to get medication abortion available on campuses. And so now they're actually working with Urge, which is so interesting.
Awesome.
And so it was a youth-led, student-led campaign to get medication abortion available on campuses. So I was talking with those folks and was just like, hey, this band's coming to Ohio. Like, I'd love to kind of pick your brain around like what this campaign looked like for you in California, which was vastly different than anything that's happening here. But I mean, like, I think it just goes towards like the potential of both having the technology of telemedicine and the efficacy and safety of medication abortion, like what that could mean for young people and also folks that are in like whatever area in the state to access the care that they need. So yeah, it was a painful committee hearing. I left and I reached out to her like they're like 3 California folks. And I was like, hi, please.
Restore my faith in humanity.
Yes. I was like, please tell me how sunny it is over in California and what this campaign looked like to you. So not completely related, but I think, a win as far as widening access to medication abortion and like college campuses. Like how awesome would that be to have in Ohio?
Right.
Well, and how much more access there would be in Ohio, and thus solving Ohio Right to Life's concern about people being too far away from a medical provider. It's really hilarious. I mean, the best way to ensure that that's happening is clinics all over the place. So let's make that happen, but not in Ohio because Department of Health sucks.
Well, and Jamie and I were discussing in the car a little bit ago how if you're going to look at patient safety, telemedicine keeps people from traveling on highways, which
is dangerous.
By comparison, is significantly more dangerous.
Right.
Yeah, somebody being able to stay in their hometown and not get on their freeway to drive to Columbus or Cleveland or Toledo to get access to their health care is actually way safer.
Right.
We actually cared about patient safety, which is not what we care about.
Right.
And this bill, looking at the rest of the current set of abortion restrictions currently pending, is just the latest bill based entirely on misinformation and lies. Including bills to promote funding for crisis pregnancy centers, all of these abortion bans, Peggy Lehner's,
fake
craziness.
reversal bill.
Yeah, not actually based in medical science.
Not actually a thing.
Not a thing, but more legislation to push bogus ideas.
Yeah.
And in a time where if you're really paying attention to the state house, the different heads of the Republican caucuses are having debates over, some fairly serious things, education funding primarily amongst them.
Yeah.
You guys could be putting more attention onto that instead of pushing bills that are just stuff that's made up.
Well, yeah, I mean, you look at it, they missed the constitutional deadline for the transportation budget. They missed the constitutional deadline for the state operating budget last year. And then they realized that they completely and totally screwed up the school funding thing and had a deadline, I think, was it like the end of January, February 1st or something like that, to fix that problem. And they couldn't get their act together and do that. Like the only thing it seems that they can get their act together to do in the Ohio State House is to ban and limit access to abortion care.
Right.
It seems to be the only thing they can agree on.
Right.
Or other crazy idea that they had, and Sarah, you testified.
Oh my God, such a waste of time.
Let's condemn porn.
Yeah.
What do you think about porn, Sarah?
Wow. I have so many thoughts on porn. So I had yet again the unique opportunity to go to the State House. That's just what I start with. I'm like, I'm just so lucky and honored to be able to go to the State House and
the People's House.
Yeah, and talk about these things. So House Resolution 180. They amended it it was first to declare porn as a public health hazard. And they amended it to be, in fact, a public health crisis, declaring pornography a public health crisis.
Bum, bum, bum.
Right. Like so scary, so awful. It was interesting. We had been monitoring it and working with the caucus staff to see where was it going to go? Is it going to move? Would it be helpful for us to come and testify? And they were like, absolutely. We need you to come, because a lot of folks, unfortunately, have been shied away from this topic because of how taboo and stigmatized pleasure and sex and pornography has become in society. But we want to talk about abortion and people's bodies in a whole other way.
Right.
We went ahead and testified. It was rough, I'll say. I was grilled for probably 20 minutes. I think the whole highlight of the entire committee hearing was Candace Keller asking me how to watch porn. It was just it literally just, I think I blacked out. My face when I watched the video again, I had to take a day. I was I had to take a day before I went and watched it again. And I think I actually blacked out. And so I was quoted in one article and it said, well, that's up for you to decide, Peggy. Or not Peggy, Candace. I'm sorry. There's so many. Right. So I think that was just the whole point. And that they really believe that pornography is a vehicle or gateway into violent behavior resulting in things like human trafficking, sex trafficking, and other health crises, quote. And what the research has shown and what public health experts have like repeatedly said is that that is in fact not the case, and that like we're going to look at the macro issue here. Like that's really not the root. Like this is not the root of the problem, right? Like naming porn as a health crisis isn't going to solve the problem of toxic masculinity, violence, or misogyny, and how it's being consumed online and in the porn industry.
Yeah. I mean, that is the public health emergency
right there.
Toxic masculinity, misogyny, sexual assault, like that is the public health emergency.
I mean, blank stares, I don't even know if they know those words.
Oh, sure
but that's, you know, they're walking around the larger issue and trying to say that porn isn't all bad. All porn is bad, and nobody watches it. Nobody, right?
Except like violent sexual offenders.
Right, exactly. And
these
so
are the Republican arguments.
Yes.
Right. And so, you know, we came in to say, like, one, this is not a way to approach the root of the issue, right? And two, like, perhaps if we focused our time on things like comprehensive sex ed, and arming our young folks and people with like early education about what healthy relationships look like and how to explore your sexuality and pleasure and bodily autonomy and consent, like basic fundamental like things that we know that the state legislatures actively defunded and actively work to prevent from happening in our schools. But that's not the problem, right? Like we know that at alarming rates, like young folks are turning to the internet for their information because they're dissatisfied from what they're learning in schools, and or they're not getting it. So it's just not meeting the needs, right? And so it was interesting. They seem to think that this resolution will stop people.
And even if we stop people from watching porn, we're not going to solve all the toxic masculinity and all those other things that are actually the problems here.
Right. And it was also just kind of fun, right? Like going in there and saying like, we're pro pleasure. Like everybody is entitled to feel good. Like that is a fundamental human right, in my opinion. Like you should feel good, whether it be means of your own pleasure or getting your pleasure from another relationship of somebody else. Like, but the state house just doesn't see that.
No.
Actually, one of the tie back to our first topic of the day, Advocacy Day, our very first lobby day, we had some very traumatized citizen lobbyists because they went and they talked to, oh my God, their name is escaping me. She had like troll hair, Linda Reidelbach, former rep from long time ago. And they came back to wherever the event venue was and just had this like deer in the headlight shocked look. And we're like, how did it go? And they're like, so she said that she believed in sex for procreation purposes only, even within a marriage. Like, even in your marriage, you were only allowed to have sex when you wanted to have a kid. Like, birth control was bad even in marriages. And and we looked her up and she only has 2 kids. And like, they were just like, they couldn't believe that was the topic of conversation in this lobbying visit with a legislator. And yes, the state legislature is 100%.
Well, it's just like
anti-pleasure.
Yeah. And it just got like, are we just incubators? Is that all we are for you? Like we can't have anything except
back to the nursery, woman.
Yes. Like, barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen.
And somebody sent me a link. You mentioned Representative Candace Keller. Apparently, also this week, she was in the House Federalism Committee where they were discussing guns. And so she was. So, yeah, I mean, it's totally just legislators talking out of both sides of the mouth. So
we'll try to find it too and put it in the show notes for folks. Ann Fisher actually did an amazing 1-hour program on this resolution where she talked to Jenna Powell, the woman who is the sponsor of the resolution and also the sponsor of the CPC tax credit kickback to Candace Keller bill that we've talked about on this podcast before. She talked to a public health expert to actually define what a public health crisis is. And gun violence and police violence are actually 2 declared public health crises by public health experts, not porn. And then actually a female porn director from California. So it was a really good show talking about it too. So we'll try to link to that in the show notes so folks can listen.
Right. And then we got events coming up. It is just about time for the Women Have Options Bowl-a-thon.
Yay.
And
Um,
preterm does one
and-
too.
and
And
preterm-
also the Aggie Fund.
Okay,
in
so all the
Toledo.
it's
all the
bowl-a-thon
bowl-a-thons.
Bowl-a-thon season.
There are events that lead up to those, though. So Women Have Options is hosting their annual kickoff party February 25th. It's a Tuesday at 6 p.m. at Pins in downtown Columbus. So if folks want to come play pinball with me, can go duck
Bowling.
Duck pin bowling, whatever it is.
and learn about starting a team to directly fund abortion care.
Fund all the abortions.
Mhm.
Right. You can come to the kickoff party.
Yes.
So that same day, February 25th, up in Toledo, is the Repro Health Happy Hour,
Yes.
which this month benefits us, benefits NARAL Pro Choice Ohio.
Yay.
And we made a decision that the proceeds that we receive will actually go back to paying for Abortion Provider Appreciation Day
Yes.
thank you gifts.
Things. Yes.
So donations to that event in Toledo will
help us support clinic staff across the state. Well, primarily in Toledo, but
right.
Yep.
So that's Tuesday the 25th, 7:30 at the basement in Toledo. And then on the 26th is the next hearing for the telemedicine abortion ban.
Mm-hmm.
Fun times.
At least we think so. We don't have
Yeah.
the actual calendar out yet. Ohio Right to Life gets a full week in advance to know that they're having it, but we only get 2 days.
Right.
Yeah, whatever.
February 29th in Cleveland at Deep Roots Heart Experience is the RJ Wind Down, which is an event that we co-sponsor along with New Voices for Reproductive Justice.
Yeah, Ashley on our team is doing a fabulous job with that.
Right. March 6th is the 8th annual Women Have Options Solidarity Clothing Swap. That's March 6th and 7th at St. John's Church in Columbus. Have you ever done the clothing swap?
I've done it, I think, just about every year since I've moved to Columbus. It's awesome. It's just a huge space filled with amazing clothes and people everywhere, folding, organizing, folks coming in, donating, purchasing. There's snacks, of course.
Always.
But I think is it a 2-day event or?
Yes.
Yeah. So 2 days you can come, you bring a bag, you take a bag, you either bring stuff or you leave with stuff.
Right.
And all the proceeds go to the abortion fund. And it's great. It's a great way to some shorter weather clothes, or you just want to get rid of stuff that you've been holding on to. I know I have been. I had like 3 garbage bags after moving of stuff that I've been like hoarding to get rid of at the lobby, or not the lobby day, at the all I've been talking about is lobby day.
Clothing swap.
Clothing swap. Maybe I'll get an outfit for lobby day at
There
the
you
clothing
go.
swap. That would be
Nice.
fabulous. So yeah, it's awesome. Everybody should go. It's a great time. If there's volunteer options as well.
Cool. March 20th for those in Athens is an Athens Repro Health Happy Hour at Jackie O's.
Fabulous people.
Yes.
Great beer.
Yeah.
March 21st is a Through the Decades Abortion Provider Appreciation Prom.
Yes.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah. March 21st, that's a Saturday at Mr. Zub's Deli in Akron. I have
Mhm.
no idea what that venue is
No, I don't
other than
either.
a deli. So
Sounds like there'll be sandwiches.
apparently, but I mean, it's a prom.
Mhm.
So if you want to go and put on a ball gown and a tux and
How about it?
have at it. And so it's an abortion provider appreciation event.
Yes.
So
Mhm.
and then the last one here is April 1st. Again, Freedom of Choice Ohio's Advocacy Day.
Join us. Be there.
Do it.
We're probably planning the happy hour the same day.
That sounds like a fabulous idea.
Yeah, I think we're all going to need
Mhm.
beverages of
Beverages.
sorts after that day. So details to come. We're trying to lock down the location. But if you can't join us for the actual day, hopefully you can join us for the happy hour afterwards.
Cool.
Cool.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me. Wow. I can't
Yeah.
believe it's been this long since I've like actually been on this podcast.
Yay.
Yeah. Thank you.
See everybody next week.
Bye.
Bye.